Good morning, everyone. It's time to get started. It's 1 minute past 10. And welcome, everyone, to the webinar on key challenges for transitioning to COR 2020 and how to address those challenges. And even before we get started, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the ECAO for helping us arrange this webinar to meet you wonderful people, at least virtually. And rest assured, we're going to meet physically very soon next year. We're going to arrange some physical seminars and get to see people as well. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Kathy, for all your wonderful support to get this webinar going. And a quick housekeeping for this webinar, housekeeping rules for this webinar. So this will have question and answer segment right at the end, and you can ask question and answers to the Q&A box that you see right on either top of your screen or the bottom of your screen. Please click on the Q&A box and feel free to ask questions. We do have an ISO 45001 lead auditor as well as external core auditor of the IHSA with us today, who will be the speaker. So an ideal person to ask questions. So without any further delay, let's move on to the agenda for today. So we're going to start off with why move to COR 2020, then explain the transition timelines of the IHSA and some basic transition planning that's required. Then new core elements, and then the common core elements, and the core 2015 to 20 elements. So we have divided the elements into 3 buckets to make it much easier for you to grasp and understand. And the challenges, some of the key elements that especially we are seeing as in the external core auditor will be in a better position to explain, like element 1, 3, 4, 7, 8, and 14. We're going to deep dive into each of those. And then we're going to be talking about some general challenges that you're facing as an employer for transitioning to COR 2020. Now, before we move over to our speaker, we do have a poll that we are running, and the poll is more to find out where you are in terms of your core journey, and are you transitioning or in the process or haven't started. So the reason for that is it'll help the presenter for today to understand and calibrate the message according to the audience's requirements and understand you better. So can I request my Zoom team at the back end to quickly run the poll, and it'll hardly take 30 to 40 seconds, and let's wrap it up as soon as we can. Please, can we have the poll? So there are 3 questions basically. What is your current status? Are you a certified company in progress, exploring COR, or, and the second question is, have you started your transition to COR 2020, a yes or a no? And how are you managing your document and record control? Are you doing it manually or are you doing it digitally? So what happens is if you answer these questions, we'll get a decent idea and we'll show you the results of the poll of what the kind of audience we have, and the message will be calibrated accordingly. So let's wait for about another 20, 30 seconds to see how many people have answered. I do see that we have 26 participants logged in already, which is good. So I think let's get on with the results of the poll. So can I request my admin team to quickly give us the results and tell us what kind of audience we have today? Boom, here we go. What is your core current status? So very good to see 75% of you are core certified and about 19% are core in progress. Exploring core as an option, 6%. You're on the right path already. That's a great thing. And have you started your transition to COR 2020? At Sobi, as usual, is 50-50 almost. So 44% say yes and 56% say no. And how are you managing your record control? I'm so happy to see that 69% are doing it digitally, which is the right way forward with the technology being available there. And 31% are doing it manually. Thank you very much, guys. So we can close the poll and move on with the presentation. So before we move on to the next presentation, let me quickly introduce the speaker for today. Her name is Sobi Raghunathan. Sobi is the IHSA Associate External Core Auditor, and she's Vice President, Operations Strategy and Partnerships for 4S Consulting Services, Inc. So SOBI has been supporting diverse Canadian businesses of different sizes in implementing and maintaining a sustainable OHS program. Now, SOBI is also an ISO lead auditor for 45001 standard, and she's also part of the League of Champions, and she works constantly in supporting the industry with safety leadership initiatives. And she also sits on the board of governors for the Ryerson University. Without any further delay, let me pass it over to SOBI Raghunathan, who will be starting off on why the change to COR 2020. All yours, SOBI.
Thank you so much, Adi, and thanks to ECAO for allowing us to reach out to their to do allow us to present this seminar to them. ECAO has been amazing in supporting its membership with very valuable information that they can take out to the members. So I'm very confident that this seminar will leave you with that mark as well in terms of giving you some clarity on what you need to do to plan for your transition for COR 2020. Before we go into the details of what you need to understand about COR 2020, I do want to give you a little bit of context as to why COR 2020. IHSA has spent enormous amount of energy and time to come up with COR 2015, which was a great audit tool. As an auditor who have used various different audit tools, I personally like COR audit tools because it's very prescriptive. So especially for clients and members who are starting off with a safety management system, I do want to underline the fact if you are starting with the safety management system process, then COR is a very good option for you to get started, because it tells you exactly what you need to have, especially COR 2015, tells you exactly what you need to have. So it gives you the proper guidance for you to get started with your journey to implement all the processes in place to actually manage a sustainable safety management system. Safety management system is the entirety of the safety, health and safety program, and it needs to be a sustainable program because it is an ongoing effort. The biggest reason why COR 2015 got amended and came out with the COR 2020 version is because Ministry of Labor Chief Prevention Office had the mandate to come out with the Safest Employers program, and this was one of the major recommendations that came out of the Dean's report. And the ministry was working on coming up with, which is kind of going to be the gold standard for safety management system. So if you follow a standard, then you can be deemed as a safest employer. You could apply and become a safest employer in Ontario. And there's other financial benefits and brand recognition and everything else that goes with it. Ministry was trying to mirror the ISO 45001 standard to make it the gold standard for safety management system. But there has been quite a decent number of employers who are already COR certified and who are already started the COR journey. And for construction, COR really makes sense. COR, I'm not here to talk about the difference of COR in Ontario versus the rest of the provinces, because there is quite a bit of difference. The way how Ontario has dealt with it is a full detailed management system. But there were some gaps in COR 2015 to align to COR ISO 45001. So ministry made a recommendation, update the COR standard to bridge those missing pieces from the ISO 45001 standard. Then any clients who are COR certified and who are COR certified to the 2020 standard can directly apply to become Ontario's safest employers. So the COR 2015 needs to be phased out, and COR 2020 needs to become the standard for COR certification. So in this presentation, we are going to be exploring the additions and the changes to the COR 2015 standards and the audit tool. So before we go into those details, I do want to remind you of certain key dates that you really, really need to remember. December 1st, 2021, which is just few days away, if you don't submit your internal audit based on COR 2015 standards, you cannot submit any documents going forward as internal audit submission to IHSA based on 2015 standard. So the cutoff is December 1st, 2021. So if you, many of you who are COR certified or who are in the process, especially those of you who are in the process of becoming COR certified, if you are that very close to it, then do submit your internal audit to IHSA before December 2021 in order for them to accept it. If not, you need to go back, redo, and make the necessary adjustments to align to COR 2020 standard. And the second key date to remember is those of you who are already COR internal audit accepted or submitted, waiting to hear back from IHSA, any external audit, and this could be your cycle 2 audits, that means your 4th year audit. If you are following, I'm sure you will be following COR 2015 standard, but make sure to schedule your external audits if you're following your 2015, and if you didn't have a chance to transition it, then make sure to go through the transition or schedule your audit before October 1st, 2021 for your external audits. As an external auditor of IHSA, we all have been given strict instructions and it's being communicated. We are starting to see few of the audits that are coming up that is based on 2020 standard. It's very, very few. So people are still following the 2015, which is completely acceptable, till October 1st. So you have timeline to get the audit done before October 1st for external audits, not internal, external. And IHSA said by 2025, the whole transition have to be done for all the clients, all the employers who are following the COR standards. So one thing that we did at 4S, I'm speaking as an employer of 4S, which is a consulting company, one of the largest who supports with COR support for our clients. Any clients that we have been taking on this year towards the middle of the year has been already transitioned into COR 2020. So whatever processes and programs that we are working with our clients, it is based on COR 2020 standards, because we are not going to make the cutoff for the December 1st. So those of you who have started the journey, remember that and be conscious of that. That being said, let's move on to the next slide. So that gives you some of the key dates to remember, and why COR 2020, many people may be having those questions, and I hope I have given you the clarity. It is to align with ISO 45001. So let's now.
Sorry, Sobi, there's a question here. I think it will be pertinent to the slide before we move on to the next. Do you want to take it up right now?
Sure.
Yeah, so there's a question from Lauren Parnell. She says, so we recently went through our external audit based on 2015 standard. I was told from the IHSA that we were able to submit our 2022 audit based on the 2015 standard while we transition to COR 2020. Please advise. Interesting question and a very good one.
So, Lauren, I'm going to assume you have already been through your cycle 1 audit, which is your external audit for the first cycle 1. Sorry, based on cycle 1 audit, and you are going to be doing your internal audit for year 2 with the 2020. So, okay, you gave me the answer. Follow IHSA's directions. So whatever I'm giving you is for people who are going through the journey. Those of you who are already COR certified and who is on, finished year cycle 1 external audit cycle, heading towards cycle 2, or finished year cycle 2 audits. It all depends on what IHSA is accepting. But those of you, it is starting off, or who have started off, who haven't done the external audit, I would really encourage you to stick to these timelines, because they want to make sure that you are following the standard. So end of the day, IHSA is the auditing body. We are auditors. We follow the instructions, what's given to us by IHSA. So if IHSA is saying that you could still submit your internal audit, year 2 internal audit, based on 2015 standard, please go ahead, but while working on your transition plan. So they would like to see a transition plan started. So I will leave you with that, and do get clarity from IHSA and have it in writing. So in an event, if there's any confusion, always have some of these responses back in writing, so that, from one auditor to another auditor, there's no discrepancy.
Thank you very much, Sobi. Please go on with the presentation. Thank you.
So looking at the COR 2020 transition plan, some of the key things to keep in mind when you're planning for your transition. Identify efforts required to become compliant. You really need to understand. I hope in this, let me rephrase it. I hope when you finish with this seminar, that you have clarity in terms of what are some of the main areas that you need to focus on. So that's going to give you what you need to plan to move forward. In terms of support, allocate resources, because you do need the resources, and you do need a good understanding and a maturity of the person with knowledge who can guide you through this process, because there are a few additional elements, and the current tool is, when I go to the coming up slides, I'll explain, the legislative elements are assumed. So they expect you to follow and make sure you are in compliance, but it is not as prescriptive as it used to be in the past. So that's why I'm saying allocate the right resources, get the support and help that's needed, because you may need help with the transition initially. Assigning responsibility to your team. Those of you who are senior managers who have joined today, do put a team together, do assign responsibilities, and especially large organizations who have joined us today, you may have enough resources to allocate and divide up responsibility and hold people accountable for the different responsibilities and timelines. But those of you who are SMEs, small, medium-sized organizations, you wear many different hats. And safety is one of your responsibility, but it is not the only responsibility. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So, but plan yourself, create a team, and divide up the responsibility. And set realistic timelines, milestones, dates, and hold each of you responsible for that. So from 2015 to 2020, IHSA has worked out elements for transition. There are some new elements, there are some common elements, and there are some elements that have been integrated. The key thing I want you to remember in this particular program is that focus on the process. Your organization must have processes that everybody is following, and it have to be independent of the people. One of the common things that we tend to notice is internal auditors transition from one organization to another. I don't want to call, maybe it's transition is not the right word, the moment, or internal auditor, something happens to the internal auditor and the person is no longer available. What happens to your program? Especially with SME, this is an ongoing challenge, because we put a lot of responsibility onto the internal auditor. I have seen, we have been doing course support as part of Forest Consulting for the last 6 years or so. We have clients started off with the journey, and we have seen their culture evolve. But one other common thing that we are seeing is, especially with SMEs, if you haven't had a safety resource and then you bring in a new safety resource or create a role for a safety resource, one of the challenges that we are seeing is the rest of the staff, especially your middle management, is kind of taking the attitude, well, we have a safety resource. These are all the safety resources' responsibility. That is a challenge because safety resource is there as a resource to give advice, give them the directions and the support that's needed, but they are not going to be the ones who are going to do the daily inspections and the investigations and ensuring the program is maintained at the site level or the project level. So this is something that I want each and every one of you, those of you who are SMEs, to pay attention, that safety resources there as a support mechanism. It should not be a person who's doing everything to maintain the program, because when something happens to that person, your program pretty much becomes a standstill, and you do need to redevelop the program, re-implement the program. So keep those things in mind. It should be process-based, independent of people. People, process, and technology have to be integrated together to come up with a sustainable program that's easy for your organization to maintain. This is the philosophy that we follow, and at Forest, as well as an external auditor, when I go into organizations, I am looking to see people, process, technology. If they have processes in place, people are aware of it, and do they have some integration of technology that's going to help them sustain the program? Because as external auditor, I'm always looking to see how are they going to sustain the program? Is it being communicated to everybody, or is it still residing with one or two key individuals? So that's a small tip for you to consider. Now, focusing on the new elements, I'm sure those of you who have already started the transition knows about these elements. The three main elements that you really need to know and understand is amendments. So there was, as part of 2015, there was 19 elements. 2020, COR 2020 has 14 elements. So it's more condensed, but it doesn't mean things have been removed. Things have been added, but there's a lot of details that you do need to still sustain that you cannot take away from the program. So element 1 used to be just the policy statement and the commitment. Now element 1 has a subsection to it, element 1.2, which is focusing on the document and record control. Document and record control is pretty much repeated as part of many of the other elements within the COR 2020. One of the biggest changes and biggest gap from ISO to COR. Document control, record control. How are you going to manage those processes? Procurement and contractor management used to be a subsection, just 2-line subsection under element 2. Now there is a dedicated element called procurement and contractor management, which puts a lot of emphasis on contractor management. Do you go about procuring a solution or a support and all processes, and how are you going to manage the contractors? Element 14.2, the whole 2015 element 14, which used to be health hazards, pretty much got removed and moved into various different other elements. And 14.2 focuses on change management of change. So any sort of changes that happens within the organization, you do need to have a policy, a procedure, outlining and defining responsibility, how you are going to manage change within the organization. Common elements, again, the element 1 still remains element 1, even though there is a sub element to it. So element 1, the policy statement becomes 1.1. Hazard assessment, analysis and control, element 2, is still element 2, but there is much more details added to element 2. So pretty much element 14, which is a health hazard, now got moved to element 2 as well. Company rules is still the same. Personal protective equipment is still the same. Preventive maintenance is same, element 7, but there's a little bit more detail added to element 7. And communication, element 8 remains element 8. There's details added to element 8 about training and communication and delivery methods. Workplace inspection remains element 9. Investigation and reporting is 10. Emergency preparedness is 11, which remains the same. Stats and control is same, but there's a little bit more details on leading and lagging indicators that have been added. Legislation and other requirements, element 13 is still 13, but a lot of details they are putting in which have been moved and shifted from other elements like 15, 18, 17 into legislative requirements, which I will cover in the next slide. Management review is element 19 has become element 14, 14.1 and 14.2 is management of change. So that being said, let's look at the integrated elements. So safe work practices and procedures. Element 3 and 4 from 2015 standards have now pretty much become controls under element COR 2020 standards. Occupational health, which is element 14, is now under controls. And you do need to include it under hazards under element 2 as well, but pretty much become under control. And again, legislative responsibility. So there's a lot of detail that got merged into element 13, legislative responsibility, which used to be very prescriptive in the 2015 standards, have been removed. And now you need to understand anything that's legislatively required. It's going to be managed under 13. So my advice to each and every one of you who are already COR certified, who are planning for the transition, there's nothing that's been taken away. So don't look at it as, oh yeah, you know, it used to be 19 elements, now it's 14 elements, it's going to be much easier. Drop that perception, because that is not the correct perception to have, because nothing has been dropped. The prescriptive detail has been dropped, but you still need to maintain those elements. So for example, workplace violence and harassment was a dedicated element 17. It's completely been removed from the prescriptive nature of the audit from 2015, but you still need to make sure legislatively that you are compliant with. So all the details about you doing hazard assessment, risk assessment for workplace violence and harassment, communicating it, making sure the right people are involved and reassessing it and having policies and procedure, all that, and providing the necessary training, all that still exists. You do need to maintain it, but it is all lumped under legislative requirements, which is not prescriptive anymore. But you do need to understand it and maintain it. So I would never drop anything what you have been doing for those elements. Continue to do what you are doing, but you would just categorize it under 13. First aid is the same thing. Element number 15 in 2015 standards now got kind of merged into element 11 under emergency response, workplace inspection, and training and communication. So it's just being slotted into the various different elements. Health and safety representative and JHSC, element 16, it's been removed. Again, caution is nothing is being removed. It's just the prescriptive nature of the 2015 standard is being removed. But under legislative requirement, you do need. So that means you do need to ensure that if you have a site with 5 or more staff of yours or workers are at the site, you do need to identify a site safety lab. If you have 20 or more people working in a site that goes on for more than 3 months, you do need to have a joint health and safety committee. Or forget about the site specific. If you have 20 or more employees regularly employed as part of your organization, you do need to make sure that you have a functioning joint health and safety committee. You need to ensure that they are trained, you follow the standards, and you do need to do the inspections. All the regulations that needs to be followed for joint health and safety committee as per section 9 needs to be followed. Workplace violence and harassment, which I have already covered as an example, it's under legislative requirement. Same thing with return to work. Again, the prescriptive nature is removed, but you do need to have a program in place. So let's look at some of the challenges. The biggest challenges or areas that I would recommend that you need to really pay attention when you are planning for the transition is 1.2, which is your document and record control. Element 3 is the controls. So it's overall controls, which I will go through some of the details of those as well. Element 4, 7, 8, and 14.2. These are some of the key elements to pay attention to when you are planning for the transition. So taking a deeper look at 1.2, which is document and record control. Have a policy, a procedure, define the responsibilities of who is going to be in charge of maintaining documents and record control. What kind of processes you are going to implement. As an external auditor, when I am involved in an audit, what I'm paying attention is, do you have the current updated documents and records? You could have many different versions. Is the current version is what everybody following? We don't want to see various different versions. I mean, again, with COR 2015, this is not something that was identified or given any attention to it in greater detail. Whereas with ISO has always been about version controls. So version control is a bigger piece of the puzzle that applies to your safety management system. So when we go out to the sites and doing external audits or gap analysis, whatever it is, our intention is to make sure it is the current version that's being followed and all employees are maintaining the current version and they are up to date with it. If we do see the mix and match of the various different versions and different documents, and they are using documents that's not identified in your program, then those are going to be your opportunities that's going to be identified as non-conformities. It could be minor, major, depending on the nature of it, but those are definitely, that's going to be opportunities. So ensure you have the most relevant version that is available. Everything else becomes obsolete. This is why we highly, highly recommend having some sort of online management system implemented. With paper trail, paper process, it is going to be a daunting task because you may have printed so many different binders and it could be in somebody's truck. That could be an old version. People have forgotten to get rid of it and they're still following that. That is going to impose issues. So if you have automated online management system, in this day and age, everything is going electronically. So electronic system is going to help you update and ensure everybody is following the current version. Again, there's many softwares out there that supports you with safety management systems. Choose the right one that is going to work for your organization. Every software has its own challenges and opportunities, as well as it may be really good in certain areas, but it may need certain opportunities in other areas. Choose the one that fits your organization. And a system is as good as what the person or the processes that you implement. So the people who are going to be actually working on implementing the system needs to understand what needs to come with the system. So that being said, let's move to the next slide, Addy.
Thanks, Sobi. And I think we can pause for a second. There's a question from Lauren. Lauren Parnell, the same person who asked the previous question. Will the IHSA be providing the internal auditors and management any transitional training, or do they expect people to retake the 4 courses which are now based on COR 2020? I guess she's referring to the internal auditor training courses.
So internal auditors training, what we have been told, is going to be updated. IHSA did do a session, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, focusing on some of the 3 elements for the transition. And they do run certain workshops, but overall, the internal auditors training will be updated with the new audit tool, because right now the internal auditors training aligns to 2015. It will be updated, but I do not have clarity on the timelines and when they are going to be actually giving the updated training.
Yeah, thank you, Sobi. And what about the transitional training for the staff internally? So is it IHSA? That was the main part of the question.
Transitional training for your internal staff, it is your responsibility. It is not IHSA's responsibility. That never has been IHSA's responsibility. IHSA enables the internal auditors training program so that you understand how to use the audit tool, the interpretation of the audit tool. The same thing for 2020. But in terms of you providing training to your internal staff, it's always been your responsibility. So you could get them to take more internal auditors training courses, or you could do sessions, or you could, utilize consultants like ourselves or anybody else who understands the process to give clarity to your internal staff.
Thank you, Sobi. Just one question. I think I can take this. And there were COR workshops in the past as well. Will these be launched for COR 2020? I think Sobi partly answered that because the thing is, we do not have the timelines as yet from IHSA, right? Sobi, about any kind of workshops?
Yes, Addy, I do want to set the clarity. I do not have timelines. IHSA hasn't communicated any other timelines, but I am aware that they did do a session a couple of weeks ago on the 2020 couple of elements that they were focusing on. So I'm sure they'll be doing many more sessions in the future.
Thank you very much, Jake, for that question. Thank you, Lauren, for your follow-up question. Sobi, all yours. We'll move over to the next.
And can you just move on to the next slides, please? So I have pretty much covered what is on the slide as well. Controls. So from 2015, element 3 and 4 have been removed, and now it's under the broader spectrum of controls. IHSA is emphasizing a lot more hierarchy of control. So what it pretty much says is whoever is doing the hazard assessment must understand how to go about doing the hazard assessment and what are the details in the hazard assessment, especially when they are recommending controls, because one of the common things, even as an external auditor or a gap analysis, safety compliance review auditor, when we go in, whether it's COR or ISO, people have done enormous amount of work, and there are spreadsheets after spreadsheets of hazard assessment that's being done. But pretty much all of them focuses on PPE. Even when we go to the site level to look at the daily hazard assessments that's done, it really focuses on PPE. Wear a safety vest. Have your full harnesses in place. That is not enough. You need to, this is why middle management's training is crucial. Your middle management, not just your internal auditor, your middle management needs to understand what are the different types of hazards. We spoke about health hazards in element 14. It's not just health hazards. You have your physical hazards, chemical hazards, health hazards, and the list goes on ergonomic hazards. They need to understand the different types of hazards, and they need to understand the hierarchy of control. some of the processes and the day-to-day work steps that they follow, they should be looking at the potential hazards and look for, can this be eliminated? Can it be substituted? If elimination and substitution is not possible, can we introduce any kind of engineering controls? If not, what are some administrative controls that we can do? And as a last resort, you actually look for PPE. So we look at it at the source, along the path, and at the worker. So PPE is the last resort at the worker. And that's the most common one people always put in any kind of hazard assessments. Even when we go in there and look at daily hazard assessments done by the site supervisor or superintendent, we always definitely see opportunity for improvements. But as an external COR auditor, one of the things that we do understand, and we take this with a grain of salt, is the first year external auditor audit is a little bit easier than your fourth year cycle 2 external audit, because you have been given more than 3 years to make improvements to your program, continuous improvements to your program, and revamp the program, and continuously maintain the program. So your cycle 2 audit is going to be a little bit more tougher than cycle 1 audit, external audit, and the details and emphasis and the questions the auditors will ask will be a little bit more specific, and they are looking for much more details. So elementary pretty much says that you do need to define and put emphasis on hierarchy of control. That means you do need to make sure people who are doing the hazard assessment understand the hazard assessment. I mean, one of the things I can relate to as being a safety professional in the field for over 22 years and being done numerous hazard assessment. Hazard assessment takes time. And if it's done correctly, you could build up on it. If it's not done properly, then you do need to redo it. Hazard assessment is the foundation to your health and safety program. If the foundation is solid, you could keep building on that. But if the foundation is weak, you do need to redo it. Being having a large number of consultants supporting with various different safety management systems, whether it's COR or ISO, our consultant spends the most amount of time in doing the hazard assessment. We work with the internal team to actually do the hazard assessment team and input all the details into the safety management system software. And that is going to help you maintain and sustain the program. Because if the safety management system, again, your software that you choose, if it has a very solid hazard assessment piece incorporated as part of the management system, from that system feeds in all the other details. From that system, it's going to tell you what kind of policy procedure that people need to acknowledge. And if you make a change to a hazard, it should update the policy procedure and reassign all that to the appropriate personnel. It connects to training. Based on the hazard, you identify training, certain training, and what kind of the frequency of training. So online management system can support you if you have the right online management system in place, from hazards to policy procedure reviews, acknowledgement, to doing the inspections, the training, and updating and sustaining all this, and then helping you with your dashboards, all that. So do pay enormous amount of attention to the hazard assessment piece and the controls, and do train your staff on the understanding of how to do a proper hazard assessment. One of my advice, being an external auditor, professional in the field, and providing support to many different organizations, invest the time to train your middle management. And when you invest the time and resources to train your middle management, always make sure that it is, as much as possible, a private training session, where you bring the team together and talk about your program and how you're going to maintain your program and the understanding that they need to have to maintain the program. When they go for the public training sessions, I mean, there are many public training sessions. I know it's given by unions to IHSA, that's free and everything else. But when you're sending a person for a public training session, they're going individually. When they come back, their day-to-day work carries on and they have forgotten half of what they have learned, and it is not very specific to what they are going to do and actions that they are going to take in their workplace. So I would highly recommend invest the time and move forward with that, with providing more additional training for your middle management. Element number 4, procurement and contractor management. This needs a lot of attention. You may have subcontractors who are helping you with your delivery of certain contracts. You need to make sure that you have a written procedure in place for procurement and contractor management. And whoever the contractors that you have in place, my advice to everybody in the construction industry is if you can encourage all the construction companies to start taking the COR journey, COR 2020 journey. It is going to put all of you in a similar playing field. I know right now from residential contracting to ICCI, there's a big gap because one is much more structured and controlled, while the other is not as controlled in terms of their safety management systems. If we can encourage everybody to step up and have a properly implemented safety management system, encourage people to go towards COR journey. You know, when they go towards COR journey, one of the common things that we do hear from people is, well, I'm not getting more projects. I have gone to COR, it was a lot of daunting tasks, and I'm not getting more projects. Projects will come, but COR is going to help you define processes. When you have defined processes, it's going to see many benefits from delivery, you know, timelines, you meeting timelines, people are running more effectively and efficiently, and all that. These are side effects that will come from it. So that would be my advice. Define your responsibility. Contractors have to complete hazard assessment. So now you're not just looking for them to give you a standard safety manual because it's dime a dozen out there. People will actually pay money to develop a safety manual. It may not meet or comply to all the tasks and processes that they do. A safety manual should be developed after doing a hazard assessment. And that's the proper way to do it. But ensure that your contractors are following and understanding the hazard assessment. They do need to give you copies of it. Again, if you have systems that can work together, that would be even more easier for you. You'll evaluate the contractor's competency. So again, these are some details that you're going into, looking at the controls, impacts of workers, and then the impact of contract workers. All that needs to be defined. Moving on to the next slide, Addy. Communicating with workplace parties on any OHS changes. You do need to define a communication means to update whether it is contractors, your employees, any changes to your OHS program. Coordinate site-specific OHS requirement for multi-employer workplaces. So again, site-specific, everybody who is working on the site have to follow the processes. So as electrical contractors, you may have subs working with you. You do need to ensure that they are following the same instruction the site expects you to follow, and have specific forms for evaluating contractors. So you do need to evaluate your contractors who are performing various different job functions or work for you. So make sure that you define that. Preventive maintenance, the simplest takeaway is we all used to look at owned equipment. Now, leased and rented equipment needs to be factored into the preventive maintenance program. This is the simplest takeaway for you to understand. So all what you do for preventive maintenance program remains pretty much the same, but leased and rented equipment needs to be included and incorporated with the preventive maintenance cycle and programs. So remember that as your key takeaway. Training and communication, evaluation of learning. Again, my advice and my acceptance as an external auditor, as long as you are providing more training than needed, it is always good. You could get away with e-learning, online learning for any awareness-based training, but do make sure there is some form of evaluation of learning. So there have to be some sort of a test to test their knowledge and make sure that they do have, whether it's a 70% or 80% threshold standard to pass a test. If not, they need to redo the programs. I know with online, we always set it up for certain threshold to pass. So these are evaluation of learning. Identifying competency for each of the task and role. Again, based on the task from the hazard assessment, what are the competency, what are the additional training they need to have, and ensure those training records are kept up and it's maintained across the organization. Taking into consideration different level of responsibility, abilities, language skills, and literacy. Especially in this day and age, and especially in the GTAA, we do have a large number of immigrants who may have language difficulties. You do need to incorporate in your training model the various different opportunities and challenges that you have to face and how you are going to communicate and get the training across to people who may have language difficulties. So if you have training providers who can offer training in multiple languages, I know that as part of the e-learning system that we had, that we do offer all the mandatory training in various different languages that applies to the majority of the languages in the GTA area. So look for something like that. Look for different ways, and you have encountered, so the person who's managing the process for training identifies the demographic of your employees and if there's any language challenges and how do you overcome those challenges. How the training will be administered and managed. So again, define certain training have to be in-class training. Certain training can be online, awareness-based training. Come up with, there's no perfect method to this. As an external auditor, I will accept any methodology as long as it's done properly. I do not want to see, and I always look for this when I'm at the site, is training is given as just awareness within 5 to 10 minutes of a toolbox talk. That, for me, is not training. And I know in many construction sites in the past, that was the case. And thanks to COR and ISO and other safety management system that put more emphasis on standardizing training and training times. So these are some of the details that we do look for and pay attention to when we are out at the sites. Management of change. Do you have a written procedure for management of change that includes roles and responsibilities? During implementing the change, identify changes in legal requirement. For example, Workplace Violence and Harassment Program had many changes and updates to it. When the update comes, you do need to go back to your policies and procedures, update those policies and procedures, then you need to update your communication and training to include those changes. And to communicate that to your workforce. This is an example of change that happens, and it trickles down to all the various different pieces of the puzzle. Introduction of any new product, processes, or services. If you do change a process, you do need to go back to your hazard assessment, make the necessary changes. Then you do need to manage the change, communicate the change, and ensure if there's additional training that's needed, that is given, additional PPE that's needed is given based on the entire change process. Again, if you are removing or making any amendments to any of the process, you do need to revisit all this. Applying elements 2, which is hazard assessment and controls, to any of these identified changes is crucial, and training again is a crucial piece of this puzzle. General changes, I think I stressed enough on this. Even though from 2015, 19 elements to 2020, 14 elements, my key message to you is nothing is being really taken away. What has been done is they have shifted from being very prescriptive to put a lot of things under legal requirements under element 13. So it's not very prescriptive, but the expectation is the same. So I would encourage you, those of you who are already COR certified, to maintain those elements. You can realign the process. It all depends on how you want to manage it. Nobody's going to tell you this is how your program needs to be implemented. Speaking as an external auditor, I will accept as long as the program meets the guidelines and the standards. I'm not going to sit there. I want to see everything aligned to 14 elements. It was very common, and even as a consulting company, speaking from Forest's solutions, we aligned everything to 19 elements. All of our policies, procedures, even the management system, solution online, everything is aligned to 19. Now we are transitioning everything into 14, which will make it easier for clients to maintain. But there's nothing written in stone that says you have to transition into just 14 elements in your binders and everything have to align with it. But do maintain, do not drop, especially element number 16, 17, 18, 15, don't drop those elements. You do need to sustain those elements. It's just, moved around in various different areas. Employers need to ensure compliance, especially compliance to overall stuff. This is where I always say, don't just do it for the sake of the audit or the audit tool. Do it for due diligence sake. Have a very robust safety management system in place that you are checking and managing and continuously making improvements to it. We always follow the slogan, stay in compliance, be in compliance, stay in compliance, and keep your program alive. If you're COR certified or ISO 45001 certified, you do need to keep your program alive, because if you don't keep your program alive, you won't be able to pass the internal audits or the audits that's done on a yearly basis. Maintain the required documents and records. Again, other general transition challenges, document control is going to be a big piece. It is going to be reflecting on all the other elements. Knowing when to transition, budget and resource are key things that you really do need to, especially those of you who are senior managers and business owners who are in this seminar. You do need to put resources aside. That means, the talent and treasure that is needed to make this possible. Senior management's involvement is crucial. I always advise all of our clients, and especially as an external auditor, I'm looking for senior management's involvement, senior management's commitment. It's not just in the means of documents and signing off on documents and showing me proof of documents where they have acknowledged stuff. I want to understand senior management is involved in the process. They are attending regular meetings. They are involved in evolving the safety culture. We are looking for those details. As an external auditor, when I see senior management involved, when I see a safety culture, I do relax in terms of how much detail I actually dig through. It gives me certain confidence that they are doing it for the right reason and they do have processes in place. Middle management engagement is crucial. Do invest the time and money to train middle management. And some of these trainings should be ongoing training on a yearly basis. Bring the teams together. It is a team building exercise, which is going to give you the chance for them to buy into the safety management system, because safety is always seen as, oh, it's one extra task that I need to do, or I do need to spend extra 10, 15 minutes on a day-to-day basis doing all the safety check. No, safety is part of your day-to-day process. So again, I do want to kind of give you a couple of tips and tools. When you are going through if you are started the core journey, register with excellence providers. There are many excellence training providers. I believe there's 22 or 24 in the province who you can participate with for safety excellence program. I know ECAO also offers excellence program. Forest also offers excellence program. Excellence should be part of your safety journey. So again, we have made many recommendations to WSIB in their validation process because they were looking for extra work for validation. They are listening to us in terms of the documents that they are going to accept for validation. We do have, stay tuned, Addy will inform all the participants about the upcoming session that we are going to be hosting with WSIB and the new CPO, talking about the excellence journey towards sourcing. So COR and ISO is part of that journey. Those of you who are in the beginning state of the journey, become registered. Excellence is the only way for you to get some rebate from WSIB. There's no more near, there's no more CAT 7. It is only excellence. So you do need to be registered with one of the providers who are approved for excellent safety providers. And then you can pick and choose the topics. The foundational topics, intermediate topics is what applies when you started the journey. And if you are already accredited, then there is only 4 topics. I have highlighted the 4 topics: control of documents, controls of records, contractor management program, and change management program are the 4 topics which perfectly aligns with CORE 2020. So when you are starting that journey, register with excellence, get the rebate for it, because that's the easiest way for you to get rebates. And for we have provided many different solutions in the past. If it's a large organization, we do a one-on-one session with the transition as well, and the excellence journey. So do pick the provider who you want to work with and take advantage of excellence and the rebate that you would get from excellence. Once you are CORE 2020 certified or ISO 45001 certified, my advice to larger clients who do provide services across the country or internationally, transition into ISO 45001. That's going to make your life easy. If you are providing services within Ontario, CORE 2020 standard is the best standard for you to follow. So I hope I have given you some clarity on that. And once you have got those certificates, apply for becoming the safest employer in Ontario. The only reason that you wouldn't be qualified, or those employers who, if you had a fatality in your organization, you would not be, you cannot become safest employer, you cannot participate in the SOCI program, but everybody else should be marching towards the SOCI program. They have allocated over $3 billion for the safety SOCI program. And once you apply, you will get 3 years of rebates. So the rebate detail and structure, we are going to be doing a detailed seminar of that in February. Stay tuned for that. But you do qualify for much more rebate than what is given in excellence. And that's over the course of 3 years. That leads us to the last slide. Sustainable way to transition into CORE 2020. Key takeaways: manage your transition roadmap. Identify what you are going to do, who's going to be supporting you with it, focusing on training management, and the other piece of the puzzle, which is document control and record control. How are you going to make sure somebody is going to stay on top of it, or you have forces or technology that's going to be supporting you with this? So that leads us to the end of this presentation. I hope I have given you an overall understanding of areas that you need to focus and plan for your transition. And again, my key message to all of you is don't look at it as from 19 elements, it's 14 elements, so it's less work. It's just condensed. From the prescriptive nature, they have more gone towards the ISO methodology, which is they assume that you have to follow all the legal requirements.
Thank you very much, Sobi. So I guess it's time for Q&A, and I do see a couple of questions coming in. And I'd like to take this opportunity to actually request everyone to put in their questions in the Q&A box. You have an ISO auditor as well as an external core auditor. If you have any questions regarding the transition planning or any challenges you're facing, you can ask your questions right now. That's the whole purpose of this webinar. So Jake Thompson Sobi has a question for you. I know that safety culture is, in general, is focused on continual improvement, of course, but how long will it be again until COR changes the program structure? Do you foresee this happening again in the next 5 years from now?
I don't foresee changes happening to COR 2020 unless they come up with a new ISO update. Because right now COR aligns with ISO. That's why I was telling you, if you are providing services within the province, COR 2020 standard is a great standard for any organization to follow. Construction, everybody should be following that. That would be my advice as a safety professional. But even for manufacturing and any other services, it is a great standard to follow. It is very prescriptive. It's a great standard to get started. But if you are offering solutions across the provinces and the country, ISO 45000 is a good standard to follow. I don't foresee too many changes happening. It does take time for safety culture to evolve. It does take time for safety program systems to mature. That's why you really do need to focus on continuous improvements. So I hope I have answered your question. I don't have a clear-cut answer saying in the next 5 years there's going to be changes or not, but I don't foresee any changes at this point.
Thank you very much, Sobi, and thank you, Jake, for that question. And Sobi, while we wait for some more questions to come in, I think the audience today might be interested in your inputs, because we keep getting these questions, right, on ISO 45001 equivalency with COR. So if you have some insights or inputs which could help some of the companies, especially the larger ones on the call today. So what are your thoughts on that? If you could share, please.
So if you are, I know GTA is one of our clients, and we have many clients who do provide services to the airport, and COR is one of the mandates that they have asked. But if you have ISO, because there are many large organizations who do provide services to some of the larger townships like City of Toronto. City of Toronto, they have made it very easy. It have to be either COR or ISO. But if you were to look at GTA, they said COR. So this is a common question that comes when we are dealing with clients who are serving the GTA is, do I have to be only COR certified? The answer is you could be ISO 45001 certified, but the biggest understanding that you need to have, and we have had this happen many times with our clients, and I'm sure John can relate to it when he's talking to clients who are seeking for some sort of a support. The common rumor that we hear is, well, I could get ISO certified within 3 to 6 months. Why is it taking me, 12 to 18 months to get COR certificate? Whether it's COR or ISO, the program implementation and journey time is same if you are starting with the beginning stages, where you don't have a fully implemented health and safety management in place. You need to put all the pieces of the puzzles together to make this happen. Then it is going to take time. If you go for any of the seminars with IHSA, they will tell you COR is a 12 to 18 months journey. I have been in many meetings with Paul Casey, who's the VP who heads the COR program. He has said many times, minimum 12 to 18 months. At the same time, we have heard that people saying, well, I got ISO certified within 6 months, I should go for ISO versus COR. You could definitely go for ISO versus COR. Nobody's telling you don't, and I have given you some parameters in terms of which program you should go for and why. If you are planning on going for ISO, make sure the biggest difference is the scope difference. In ISO, you could scope out certain locations, certain aspects of your program. We have for our largest client, multi-million-dollar project that we have been doing to support with ISO program implementation across the country. For the first ISO certification, they only picked 2 locations, 2 of their largest locations. And they are going to be certified for just those 2 locations. They cannot go claim, they can't go take that and submit to IHSA and say, they are manufacturers, so their functionalities are different, so you can't really connect to construction. But you can't just go and say, I audited my head office and I'm ISO certified for my head office, now give me co-equivalency. It has to be for the full scope. That's the biggest difference between ISO and COR. COR is the full program. So they look at your firm number, your account number, and it is for that firm. All the details of services that goes with that firm and number is what you should be included in your ISO audit. If the ISO audit only looks at a different scope, that's why when you send it for IHSA for equivalency, they will look at the audit report, they will look at all the details in the summary in the audit report. If it includes the full scope of the organization and all the processes in the organization, you will have no issues getting the equivalency. But if it's only for a narrow scope, then your equivalency won't be possible for you. So please understand that when people are saying I could get ISO done in a short period of time. I mean, even if you are, we have had situations where people are saying for the transition, rather than me planning on the transition for COR 2020, I'm already COR certified, let me just go for ISO. If that's going to suit your business needs, please go for it. But the changes in documents, not changes, the transition is going to be the same journey. Because if you're 15 certified, you are still missing the biggest piece for the contract management, document and record control, and management of change is missing. So you do need to make sure those pieces of the puzzle are in place in order for you to apply for ISO 45001. So I hope that gives you clarity.
Thank you so much, Sobi, for such a good explanation. There is a question from Michael Mulgrew, Sobi, and it's a very interesting one at that. And I'd like to get your thoughts as well on that. Is there an effort from the IHSA to standardize external auditor evaluation criteria? Currently, it varies greatly between auditors and is very tough to anticipate. Also, why are there less than 1,000 contractors with COR after so many years? It does not look good for COR and owners, and then the owners will have a hard time enforcing COR with low competition. What is the IHSA's plan to get more competitive companies certified? So there's a bundle of questions.
Michael, great question. Let me answer the part first where you're talking about COR. How come there's less than 1,000 contractors who are COR certified? This cannot be done only by IHSA. This needs to be done collectively by all of us, which includes all of you. When you have subcontractors, you are hiring. It could be a small mom and pop shop. It could be a small outfit with 4 or 5 contractors working. If you are going to be accepting them to have no health and safety program, then how can we have more people? So we all need to work collectively together to make sure anybody, let's start with construction. Anybody who is a service provider in construction, electricians, HVAC, bricklayers, you name it, GCs, encourage everybody to go for COR 2020 standard. Even playing field for everybody. It is going to be competitive, and we are marching towards creating a safer Ontario. And that is the vision that the ministry has with the SOCI program. So all of us need to work together, not just IHSA, but I am sure IHSA is talking and reaching out to various different townships and municipalities to ensure that they are requiring COR as a prerequisite on their bids. But it needs to happen on the residential side as well. For that, all of us need to work together and encourage. And to answer your the first part of your question, IHSA to standardize external auditors evaluation. IHSA's external auditors evaluation is standardized, and I could speak as an external auditor that it is very much standardized. We do follow the same processes, criteria. I can't speak for what was your experience, but all the reports that we do in terms of starting off from the filling out the audit plan, the NFAA, we don't determine and just go give something to a client and move forward with it. It needs to be approved by IHSA every stages. So IHSA actually reviews and accepts the NFAA. If they don't accept, we have to go back and make the changes or ask for more details from the company, the employer. When we do the external audit report, the audit report have to go to a lead auditor from IHSA. IHSA currently has now 3 lead auditors. So all the 18 external auditors report to any of these 3. I believe they're going to be adding 1 more person, but right now it does go to any one of these 3 people. And so for myself, I do have a lead auditor that I report to. So my audit reports have to go to him. He will have to review it. And he is very by the books, amazing individual who understands the various different programs and managements. And he tells me within 10 days, 10 working days. So from the date I give, it's 10 working days. Normally on the 10th working day, he will give me feedback on my report, and certain things he may ask me to verify further details. So I have to go back and get more details from the client, or we will get into a phone call, and I have to justify the reasons for why I'm giving certain points for this particular client. Once he's satisfied, then the audit report gets approved and we take the communication to the client. This is the same process every auditor follows. So all the 18 plus auditors who are approved IHSA's external auditor goes through the same process. I know at Forest there's 2 of us, we follow the same process as well. You know, what I may pick on, my key areas may be a little different from what Sabesh picks on, but we follow the same standard, same auditing criteria, same scoring methodology, and we do get vetted by the lead auditor from IHSA. So there is a standard in place. And if you do want to take it offline and talk to me about certain encounters that you have had, escalate that to IHSA.
Thank you very much, Sobi. And actually, thank you, Michael, for bringing that question up. And like Sobi correctly said, it has to be a coordinated effort between industry associations such as you, key safety players such as us, and the industry, that's yourself. So ECAO, yourself, and people such as us, health and safety consultants, can all put in a coordinated effort to actually get more and more people COR certified. And like Sobi said, you have the WSIB excellence and other rebates as a benefit for actually going on the COR 2020 journey, who can start off directly. If you're not, I think, Sobi, there was about 7% people who are planning to get COR certified when we did the poll. They can directly start with the COR 2020, and yeah, that makes sense.
Definitely, you could. I mean, I don't know if you're getting any help. If you're not, choose the right company to give you the help. But you should be starting with your COR 2020 journey, not 2015 standards. And do also apply for the excellence program at the same time so that you could get some rebates, because excellence is the only way for you to get rebates nowadays. And one more thing I do want to stress to all of you is WSIB made so many changes to the rate groups. You do need to pay attention to your number of accidents and lost time days, because in the past you used to be pulled with similar rate groups and other employers within that rate group. Now it's your own performance. So if your number of accidents and lost time days are going up, then you are going to be paying more premiums. So please do remember that as well. More reasons for you to have a sustainable safety management system in place.
Thank you very much, Sobi. And see that we do have about 8 or 9 minutes left, but however, we can wrap it up in the next minute or so. And unless there are some more questions, thank you, Jake. Thank you, Lauren, for all those questions. And that's the whole purpose of this webinar, just to it's a thought building process. We have experts and it's all about knowledge sharing. It's because core transition is as new to you as it's to us, as it's to everyone, right? So it's about what knowledge we gain and how we transfer that knowledge to you and how you help each other going through this phase. So we are here for just another minute or so if you have any questions.
I do want to take the time to thank ECAO for supporting all their members by providing seminars like this and all the wonderful things that they do. Very proud of being part of ECAO's membership. Thank you to Kathy, Abraham, and Tom for doing such an awesome job. And if you do need with your COR 2020 journey transition plan, you could talk to ECAO or us because both of us do provide support to clients. Same thing with the Safety Excellence Program. So key takeaways before we call it a day is choose the right program for safety management system, online management system, because there are many management systems out there. Do figure out the one that's going to help you sustain the entirety of the program, and make sure people, process, technology, it is not people dependent. Have to be process-based, and invest more time on your middle management training. Thank you so much for joining us today. You have yourself a safe and an awesome day, and stay safe. Bye for now.
Thank you so much, everyone. Stay safe. Thank you, Kathy and Tom, for all your support, including Graham. That's it from for us, and thank you very much for making it. Stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.